Hi, my name is Keith Bundy. Ron Hansen and I got together and decided to try to put on a live jam session for you all. And for those of you that came, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Unfortunately, we wanted to record the jam session and put it on the OVWG YouTube channel. And unfortunately, I forgot to hit the start button right away. So, redoing this introduction and an overview of the Wolverine system, just to show you what parts come with it. And we'll add that on so that it's in there when this gets onto the web. So thanks to those who came for the live version of this, and thanks to you that come to watch it on the club YouTube channel. And thanks to Ron for helping me out a bunch. I appreciate it. He's been an inspiration to me getting this thing going and helped me out a bunch. And we both worked very hard on this. It's not the best, but hopefully we'll keep doing them and we'll get better. So from here we're going to go over to the Wolverine jig made by One Way and go over what you get when you buy the system. Alright, this is the Wolverine One Way system set up on my grinder. With this system you get the two tool holders, as they call them. These have to be mounted specifically to use correctly. One Way says, you'll notice I've got a spacer here between the platform it's on and the grinder. One Way says that you need a height from wherever it's bolted down to the center of the shaft of the grinder of 5.5 to 6.5 inches. I have mine set at 6.5 inches. Also, the fronts of these holders have to be even with the front of the wheel when the wheel is new. If you're using aluminum oxide, they'll grind down and it'll go back. But when you set this up, set it up with a new wheel and make sure that the front of this is even with the front of the wheel. Now, as I said, it comes with two different holders. Along with that, it comes with this bar. It's called the V-arm, which slides in. You can lock it in at any place you need it to. It also comes with a platform rest. If you lock in, you use this for resting tools on, such as skew chisels or scrapers. If you're good at freehand grinding, you can take your gouges, hold your gouges on here to freehand grind. You can also get, as an accessory to this, the Wolverine Varigrind jig, they call it. That's this thing here. I have this is one of the original systems. Mine has little marks scored into it. I doubt you're going to be able to see them very well. The newer ones have notches in them. So we'll go over all that stuff, why that's there and what it's used for. But basically, this is used to hold your tools. You put your tool in the Varigrind. You set your leg to where you need it. You adjust the V-arm to get the bevel on the stone correctly, and then you sharpen your tool. We'll go over all that in more detail in just a few minutes. You can also use this V-arm for doing other tools, just by literally resting the tool in there, lining up your bevel, and grinding away. Now there's some safety things you have to know about that, and once we get into this and start doing them, start going over everything, we'll point all that out. So that's the basic Wolverine system. It also comes, or you can also buy for it, a attachment for grinding skews, which I don't have. I had it at one time. I got rid of it. I just like using the platform. And we'll also show you the diamond point stone dressing system that One Way has that you can use with this Wolverine system to keep your stones clean and flat. So now we'll move on with the rest of the presentation. I'm going to start out with the platform. I'm going to talk about some easy freehand grinding you can do. I'm just going to slide this in and lock it up. If you're a scraper user, it's very easy to grind scrapers on these. You just set your platform to the angle on your scraper. I tend to, since I've been doing it for a while, I got two platforms, I keep them locked to certain ones for certain tools. So with scrapers, I'll just lay my tool on the edge, get my scraper up to it, and then just move it along the profile. Get it sharp. Now this, I use aluminum oxide wheels and they're getting a little old. I need to replace them. So the grind's not going to match up on this 8-inch CBN real well. Okay. So you can see here where the tool's been ground, and you can just look at it, make sure you're grinding up to your edge. Or on a scraper, you can run your finger across it and you can feel that little burr that it brings up. That's pretty easy to do. Now I know over the years now, negative rake scrapers have become a big thing. And if some of you have been around as long as I have, and some of you maybe longer, you know, if you'll remember in Craft Supply's catalog, they talked about hardwood scrapers. They used to sell those. And basically they looked like this. You had your regular grind on the front, and then you had a small angle ground across the top. And that's basically a negative rake scraper. So that's what I did. I just took a regular scraper. This is about a 70-degree grind across the front. And then I flipped it over, and I just guessed and put about a 35-degree grind on the top. And actually works very well for me. So I can't, where is it? There it is. All right. So this grind actually works very well for me. I use it a lot on Australian burls. I like turning those. It works very well on cleaning up spots. It also works well on soft maple, believe it or not. The advantage with this one also is with your regular scrapers, you know, they always tell you to use them in a downward angle. These you can use almost straight in, and they work really well. The disadvantage to them is that you have to grind them a little more often. And when you grind them, you don't touch the top bevel, you just grind the bottom bevel up to it. And then eventually you wear this back and you flip it around and you grind it back off. So that's basically, again, you just start your tool or start your grinder, get your tool up to it. Up, I'm in the way again, aren't I? Let me get over on this side of it. Now you're done. And like I said, if you need to extend this again, you just flip it over, match it up, and grind it off. Now Stu Batty will run his, put me on number 3 there a minute. Stu Batty will run his, if you've seen his, what he's using as negative rake, he's got a long grind up here and a smaller grind down here. His reasoning behind that is he's just sharpening this part to keep the tool sharp, and he can sharpen it a long time before he has to flip it over and regrind the top. So basically he's just flip-flopped the two in order to do it. I've never used the tool, but I heard it works very well. All right, we're going to move on to skew chisels. If any of you use skews for things other than opening paint cans, go ahead and give me back to the grinder there. This particular rest I have in here is the one I have set for my skew angle, and it's off just a little bit. It must have got bumped. So I'm basically just matching up my bevel on here, adjusting the rest a little bit till I get the bevel where I want it. I'll lay the skew on the rest with the edge straight across the stone. I'll keep my finger jigged down below, run it up to it, and now I just move it back and forth across the wheel. till I get what I want there, and I'll bring on the other side, and I'll do the same thing. I'll get it lined up, jig my finger on the bottom of the rest, and when you're done, your 2 points, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this in the video here, but you create 2 points back here. They should be even. So in other words, your length from tip to here should be the same on each side, and you should have the same angle. Grinding skews freehand's very easy. Again, it's just lay it on the stone or on the rest, bring it up to the wheel with your finger locked under the rest, and grind it off. Yeah, Ron's reminding me, they say that your bevel should be 1.5 times, no, the length should be 1.5 times, I believe, of what you cut back here. Mine is probably not that. I'm not real concerned about it. These work very well for me for what I do. You can put a longer bevel on here if that suits you. I find that most people grind the way they grind, and if it works for them, it works for them. You can talk to all the pros in the world, and they all do things a little differently, and they all don't always agree on things. That being said, when you talk about grinding angles, Stu Batty talks about the 40-40. A lot of people are using that. I use a 40-40. I can tell you that I don't always get it a perfect 40 degrees, and it works. So I don't subscribe to being very technical and very, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. In other words, as long as you get it close, it's going to work. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal if you're off a few degrees. Not at all. Same thing about, just to get into it, we're using slow speed grinders here today. My grinder is a high speed grinder. I've been using it for years. I don't see any reason to go back to it. If you use a light touch, you're careful, you don't burn your tools. So it's all in what you're comfortable with and what you're doing as far as your grinder and also your wheels. I'm still using aluminum oxide wheels, friable wheels. They're at the point where they need replaced. I'm debating as to whether or not to get at least one CBN wheel, because I can still get you can still get aluminum oxide wheels, 2 of them, for just about half or less than what you pay for one CBN wheel right now. So I'm debating that. All right, so we'll move on. We want to talk about sharpening some gouges now. I don't use, a lot of people will use the rest and sharpen freehand, and I'll get to that on the 40-40. For my spindle gouges and the side ground gouge that I use the Varigrind with the Varigrind jig with the V-arm. And I learned a trick from Bob Roseanne years ago. There's only 2 grinds I use for this. One is for spindle gouges, and one is for a bowl gouge, a side grind bowl gouge I use. One Way recommends that you get a 1 3/4 inch protrusion out of the Varigrind to grind your tools, all of them. But that only grinds the grinds that they're telling you you're going to grind. I learned from Bob Roseanne years ago. I made this little block here. It's got 2 holes drilled in it. And you'll see on this side, it says 1 3/4 deep, 2 set for spindles. So this hole is drilled. It's got a penny drilled in, or glued into the bottom, so I don't wear it out. I just slide my tool through there till it hits the bottom, put my Varigrind up to it, and that sets my 1 3/4. The number 2 on there is the mark for the leg of the Varigrind. Now, this is an old one of the original ones. It has lines scribed in it, and the lines have to match up on the top side of the leg. And I'm set at the second long line. There's whole lines 1 through 4, and then there's half lines on this. So I'm set at 2. The newer Varigrinds have the notches marked in them. And this is Ron's, and you can see he's got his numbered from the top down. This one, the old one, you set it from the bottom up. So whichever one you're using, make sure you're just setting it right, or at the very least, make sure you get it to the same place all the time. Because if you've got this locked in, and you've got this locked in, and you've got the bevel you want on this, the only thing you need to do now is slide it up and adjust it to get your bevel flat on the stone. Lock it in. Now you're ready to grind. You roll the tool around here slowly as you go. You can slide it across the stone. You do have to be careful when you first start out, because if you get a little not paying attention, you can go off the side of the stone. As long as you're using CBN wheels, you set this the same, this leg the same, and your protrusion of your V-arm the same, you'll get the same grind every time. Now that being said, you are responsible for grinding your tool. These are two Doug Thompson 3/8 spindle gouges. Exact same gouge, and they've been ground at the exact same settings. But if you look, the one here, it looks a little pointier. It's not as rounded as this one. That's because I got careless when I was grinding, wasn't paying attention, and took more off of the sides here than I did off of the front. So even though you're set up in this and locked into these settings, it's still up to you to watch your grind, to watch what you're grinding away, because you can make a different grind. You just have to pay attention to what you're taking off. So like I said, once we're in place here, turn it on, and then just slowly roll it around. Now with any grinding wheel you use, it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. Just let it lay there. And you're done. So you got a nice surface off of that wheel there. So like I said, with the CBN wheels, everything should be locked in, and Ron will go over this in a little bit with another jig, but that manufacturer makes a thing that you bolt on here, and you can cut slots in here and drop a thing in to lock it in place for different lengths that you want. That's fine if you're using a CBN wheel. If you're using aluminum oxide wheels, that's not a good thing, because your aluminum oxide wheels wear away, so every time you go to match your bevel, you have to adjust this arm. All right, we'll go to my side ground gouge now, just to show you real quick. Again, this is my side ground gouge that I use for roughing bowls when they're green. Put it through. This time I'll set it for 2.5 inch protrusion. And then I'll set the leg at 3.5. See it in this light. And again, just adjust your V-arm till you get here. Now you'll notice that I'm pretty close. I'm above the center of this wheel. Whatever you're grinding, you want to stay above that center. You never want to get on that center or below, because it'll just grab your tool and throw it down. And it's not a pretty thing when it happens. This is close, but it's above it still. Oh, it moved because I didn't leave it in there right. Or is this loose? Yeah, I didn't get it tightened down well enough. I've still got the old original one. They make an upgrade now for tightening this in. It works a little better than the original. There we go. So we're going to line this up. We're in place. And again, it's just Grind it around, work it all the way around. Now the one thing I'm not used to with this CBN wheel, I can see right now, is with aluminum oxide you can see the sparks coming over the edge. And that's how I know I'm up to the edge. With this, I've got to look at it after I've grinded it and make sure I'm getting there. And it's done a pretty good job. So that's how you use the Varigrind. This system, like I said, comes with two of these bases, the V-arm, the Varigrind. This would be the Varigrind you'll get nowadays. They also make another Varigrind that's a little longer and a little taller, a bigger hole for bigger gouges. I have one bowl gouge that won't fit in this that I have to grind freehand. All right, so we'll move on. I know a lot of people grind their roughing gouge. Some of them will lay it on the rest and grind it. Some of them will put it in the V-arm. Again, if you're going to do this in the V-arm, match your grind and make sure it's not down here. So now I'm set with this. I'm going to turn it on. And when I grind roughing gouges, I start on the side and I grind all the way around and I don't stop. And then I'll bring it back and do the same thing until I get it straight. Because what you want to watch with these is if you come in from the side, come in from this side, or you start running back and forth like this, you're grinding the bottom of this curve in here twice compared to what you're grinding out here, and you wind up with your cutting edge lower than your wings. And that's not a good thing. On roughing gouges, you always want this to either be square across, or I always cheat a little bit and bring the wings back slightly. That way I know my cutting edge down here where I'm actually going to be cutting is not going to be ground too far back. You can do these on the Varigrind or on the V-arm, or you can do them on a platform, either way. So like I said, if you do anything on this arm, just make sure you stay above this center line of the wheel where you're grinding. This is a little square ground gouge. I call it traditional bowl gouge. This is what I learned to turn on years ago. And actually, again, I grind the top portion back just a little bit. If you buy these gouges, they're actually square all the way around. They're level all the way around. These are work I find great from the transition curve in a bowl down to the bottom. They work fantastic. And if you want, you can use them from the top down. These, again, I freehand these. You can do them in the Varigrind, I think. I've never really tried. But I do these a little different. I'll lay this on the rest, lay my finger on the rest, and I'll hold this so I can look down on the grind. I'll get over here out of the camera way. And I actually need a little light here a minute. I can't see what I'm doing. So I'll start right at the middle. I'll get my bevel there and I'll just lightly roll it around. Just keep the bevel flat on there. Come to the other side and do the same thing. Now remember, you're not jabbing this into it, you're just lightly resting your bevel on here. And again, with these tools, you don't want the lower part of your curve, ground farther back than your sides. It's just going to cause catches and everything else. You want it at least even with the sides or a little proud. I hope everybody's hearing. I haven't heard any questions yet. Feel free to yell out if you got some. It's not an issue for us. We'll stop and talk. Yeah, make sure you push your space bar down so we can hear you. Now, I know a lot of people are into the 40-40 grind nowadays. I've been using it for a number of years now. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I can get this out of here now, I think. Yeah, hang on a minute. Get this up here. That's better. All right. Yeah.
Can you decrease our pictures and increase yours so we can see what's going on a little bit better?
That's on your end. Go to speaker view on yours. Up in the upper right hand corner.
Depends on if he has Apple or an IBM.
Well, somewhere on there you should be able to choose the view you want. And if you go to speaker view, I'll be the one talking, so it should give you just me.
You can also choose any view and right-click the little 3 dots in the top right corner and hit pin. And if you pin it, that will bring that screen up bigger than any of the rest of them.
All right.
So if you find his screen and hit the pin, that'll do it. Sorry.
That's all right, no, because I'm going to be the first one to tell you, I don't know every little detail about Zoom myself. I didn't know that one. So, all right, so now the 40-40 grind, Stu Batty's been really working this, popularizing it for a while now. Mike Mahoney's been using it for quite a while. Basically, the 40-40 grind is you've got 40-degree grind all the way around your tool. If you've got a tool that isn't 40-40, you can take it, get your rest set at 40 degrees. There's been questions on how you can do that. There's several little things you can buy. Ron will go over a lot of these. This Raptor is one of them. It sets on your rest. Move it up there. When these two touch, you're flat along here. You're at 40 degrees. Interesting little thing. Here's another one. This is flat. This is 40 degrees, right? You put it up here. When those two touch, you're at 40 degrees. I was messing around here earlier, and this is what kind of makes me feel better about me saying I'm not really too worried about exact degrees. We use this one to set this up. It touches, both top and bottom. They're both supposed to be 40. When I put this one on, it doesn't touch at the top. So, huh? No, because it's touching at the bottom. I move the platform in, it's still not going to move that. So, I mean, I'd have to readjust the platform to make both of these touch. So, you know, get it close is all that matters. Now, if you've got a gouge that's not 40-40 ground, you get your best set at 40. Lay your tool flute down on it. Bring it up. And grind the top of it. Now you'll see, get some line on this for you. You'll see I've got these flats here now. Too much light? All right. You see I've got these flats on here where I've ground it. The inside profile of that's what you want to grind to now that you're going to grind your tool. So your rest is at 40 degrees. Scribe some lines on the corners of your rest, 40 degrees into the wheel. I've marked them with tape here so you can see them better. Helps me see them better because I had pencil lines on here. Now you want to lay your tool lined up with that tape. I keep mine open so when I'm looking down on the tool, I open the flute up just so I can just see inside of it. Lock this in. I use a finger down here to kind of help hold it in place. And now I just run it back and forth across here, getting a bit of a flat grind. Now you'll notice that I've got a little gap up in here. I'm not grinding right there. That's due to the shape of the tool. So I can just swing it around like so and get that in place. Do the same thing on the other side. Again, get your flute just slightly open. Grind your flat in. I'm not going to go all the way through this, but you can see now that I've started to grind down. Got it? You can see I'm starting to grind down to that on both sides. Once you get the sides ground in, then it's just a matter of laying the tool on the rest and rotating it and just watching that area. Watch what's grinding off. Rotate it and move it side to side. Take metal away until you blend all that in.
Put the video set on high definition.
Yes. So again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time grinding this in. The idea is just to get you the idea. You can see the metal. I'm moving it away, and you just want to blend it in. Now the thing you have to watch for doing the 40-40 grind, I'm going to try to blend this in a little better on the side so I can show it better. Oh, I got to get all the way up on that edge. Okay.
Keith, you have a little bit of a safety issue there because you have a too large gap between the tool rest and the wheel.
Well, and that's true. This particular, with this setup here, the bottom of this is kidding on there. I agree it can be an issue, but I'm keeping my pressure down here. So and I'm above the center line, so it shouldn't grab. But Jamie's right. You should always have your rest up as far as you can get it. This particular one is a little longer at the bottom, so it's hitting against the base that this is on.
Keith, the video's kind of blurry. Are you set on high definition?
I believe we are, yes. It might be too, because if it's zoomed in a little bit, it might be too more. I'll hold it up here a little better. Oh, there we go. So anyway, but if you look at this, on this 40-40 grind, you want this to come straight down into the bottom of the curve. A lot of times when you grind that side and you bring it in, you'll get a little dip right here, and the point of the tool will kind of flare up. So you just have to come back and grind the nose a little bit more to make sure that you've got a nice straight line coming all the way down into it. Oh, am I moving out of it again? There we go. Again, you want to come straight line all the way down into here. If you're not careful, you can get this to be a little proud. It'll come down and it'll actually curve up a little bit. You don't want that. Now the last thing you'll do on this, and you'll see here, is you'll grind the heel off. That just gives you a little better chance in the curve of a bowl. When you're going in and following your bevel, sometimes your tool will hit the outer rim of the bowl and you can't keep your bevel on. It depends a lot on it depends on your bowl shape. But if you grind that heel off, that gives you a little extra turn. I know Stu likes to grind his up real close. I've got to grind this one a little better. I usually keep about 1/8 of an inch of this bevel up here and grind up. And even then, with some of the bowls I use, I can't take this all the way to the bottom. And that's when I'll switch back to the what I call the traditional grind ground. All right, are there any questions on anything?
Keith, for the one-way jig, anybody who's interested in learning how to set it up correctly, Doug Thompson on his lathe site, on his tool site, has a full-size printout that's available to set your jigs to that exact angle, which is really pretty much universal for grinding bowl gouge.
Okay. Yes, and Jamie Mintz talked about setting up. When you buy this system, you can't just bolt it down and start using it. I had a guy call me up and said he couldn't do any sharpening with his one-way system, so I went over. One-way tells you, go to this, show the grinder. One-way tells you that, back out, you're too close. The other way. Move it over. You need to get our view straight. we're still learning some stuff, but there we go. The center line of the spindle of the grinder has to be at a certain height from the base. And I believe Ron's saying somewhere between 5.5 to 6.5. Mine is set at 6.5 inches. So from the center of here to the base has to be correct. And then the two bases or holders, whatever you want to call them, they have to be set up so that the tops of them are in line with the center line of the wheel and that they are lined up face to face, straight up and down like so. You don't want it sitting farther back or too far forward. That's recommendations of one way on how to set that up, and that's what I've always done with it. Now I'll show you a trick. They say it works with any gouge. I won't really say that because I don't know for sure. I haven't tried it on every grind. But if you have a grind you like and you don't know what it is, you can put your tool in the Varigrind and you can set it to 1 3/4. And then what you do once you get your protrusion set, leave your V-arm loose, leave your leg a little loose, just so you can move it. Set it in here. Basically what I'll do is I'll just pick a spot, I'll line up my bevel on the wheel. Now I'll roll it over on the side. And if you can see it on there, I've got a big gap on this bevel here. So what I'll do now is I'll loosen the V-arm and I'll slide it around until I get my bevel set on there where I want it. Lock it in, roll it back up. Now I've got a little gap in my bevel here. So now I'm going to adjust my leg until I get that bevel flat on the wheel again. Now I'll roll it back and I'll look at the side bevel. And if I have to adjust that, I'll adjust the V-arm again. Lock it in, come back up, adjust here. And now I'm staying on that bevel when I roll that tool. So if you don't know what your grind is, you can match it up that way. And just mark your settings after you're done, and you'll be able to keep that grind. Like I said, One Way claims it works for every tool. I can't guarantee that. The tools I've done it on, it works. Now, of course, I come in pretty close. I'm just a little over my 2, so I might not have been perfect. I'm a little over my 2 here. I have my 1 3/4 protrusion here. My leg's just slightly above my second notch where it should be for this grind. So it works fairly well. Now the other things you can get.
There's one other modification all users should make to their V-arm, and that is to take a 3/8 inch drill and make a cup right at the end of the V, so that the end of the leg on your jig does not wander around.
Oh, down here?
Yes.
Okay, I've never had any problem with that, but it makes sense. I could see where that might be an issue for some people. Mine actually, from years of use, is kind of worn into it, but but that makes sense. So we've talked.
Been doing it at the factory.
Well, and you and I both know how hard it is to get the clays to make changes to stuff that they design and sell. So basically that's the Varigrind jig. The only other thing that they sell, and you only need it, or you don't need it, but if you want it, if you use aluminum oxide wheels, you know that you've got to true your wheels once in a while. And the little handheld things, I always have issues with those. They just, I never get it flat. I always seem to have bumps in it. So I went ahead and invested in this years ago. It's the wheel dresser that One Way sells to dress their wheels. This portion slides into your VR, into your base. I got to pull this forward a little bit, Ron, because that's not going to make it because of the table. So you get that right up close, lock it in. And then they have, here it is, this arm, which has a little diamond bit here in it. It fits into a hole down here with this knob. And that knob, then you adjust, you got a little Allen wrench. I'm not going to go through all, well, I'll do it real quick. Doesn't take much. If I can get that through there. You adjust this back out. It's locked in for mine. I'm going to leave it alone for now. I don't want to waste time messing around with it. But basically what happens is you insert it in the hole down here, you back the knob all the way out. This will ride against here. I'll pull this back just so we can see. I'm not going to address Ron's CBN bill. But you get it close. And then you turn this knob with the wheel turning, so you just barely graze it as it's turning. You make a pass over and back, you give the wheel another quarter turn, it pulls the bottom out, tilts the front end, and you go back and forth like that, doing those light passes until you've cleaned. Yeah, and that's again on aluminum oxide wheel, not on these. But that will clean up your stone or your aluminum oxide wheel and make it flat, take all the bumps out. So that's pretty much what I've got for you today. It's going over the one-way system and a little bit of freehand grinding. I'm going to turn it over to Ron. He's got a couple different systems here from different people. And he's going to go over those for you.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it right now.
A couple of them I'll address here. I think I saw something about grits of wheels.
Well, first off, it says, what was that jig called? That is the one-way Wolverine system. I don't know if they can they hear me on that?
Okay, the question is what jig system we were using. This is the one-way Wolverine system. You buy this from One Way. This is when you buy the basic package, you'll end up with two bases, which are on the bottom, which holds your V-arm, and the V-arm, which Keith was showing you. Where did you put it? Right where?
Did you turn it off?
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
We need a little more volume.
All right, hang on 1 minute. Keep talking, I'll get the volume.
Okay. The Wolverine basic system will come with two bases, and make sure you get they're oriented left and right side, so you can't just buy two. You got to have a left side and a right side. And you have your V-arm, which I still can't see where it is. Where did you set? Here it is. Okay, this is the V-arm here, which your Varigrind jig fits into the V-arm. Now, on all your jigs, there's three factors that are involved. Your tool projection, and if you go by One Way, they recommend 1 3/4 inch. Doug Thompson does 1 3/4 inch. Most of your pros do anywhere from 2 inch to 2.5 inch projection. The main thing there with the tool projection is that you're consistent. That whatever projection, I personally use a 2 inch when I'm using the Varigrind system, and that's what you should stay with. The other factor is the angle of your Varigrind. What this basically does, the farther you move the leg on the Wolverine jig to the top, That means your bevel cutting edge on this side, so the higher the arm, the straighter this bevel edge on the side will be. By lowering it all the way to the bottom, it will put your cutting edge, it will put them inward. And the big difference there is if you're doing a 40-40 grind, your bevel edge is straight. If you're doing an Ellsworth grind or an Irish grind, your cutting bevel rolls inward. And then of course the projection of your V-arm is going to dictate the angle on the tip of your tool. Everybody has their own way of doing it. I think I'll start with...
Before you get started, can you guys hear me?
Can you guys hear Keith?
Barely.
That's because I'm going to
Okay.
steal the mic for him just for a second. I'm going to go back on these questions real quick in the chat. Somebody was asking about the jig for dressing the wheels. Again, that is for aluminum oxide wheels only, not for CBN wheels, but if you're interested in it, that is sold through One Way. That is their dressing jig for the Wolverine system when you're using aluminum oxide wheels. That's extra. You got to buy that separate from the system. Now, let's see, what was the other question here? There's some questions, something going on in the chat talking about marking your bevel with black marker when you sharpen it. That's fine if that helps you see it. It's a good way to reference it. It's not a problem. Just looking back here. Question from Courtney: how do you keep the angle consistent? Seems like it would drift over 20 sharpenings. Courtney, which tool were you talking about?
Really, all of them. I think the first tool with the curved on the curve on the scraper. It seems like that radius would change or the shape would change.
As long as you're keeping your, like I said, that's where your light touch comes in, and that's where I would have to use CBN wheels a little more to get used to them, because I'm used to the aluminum oxide. You see the sparks coming over, so you put your tool up with the edge away from it, and you slowly rock it in. You'll see the sparks coming over the edge, and then you just grind it. And it's just a matter of learning to follow that grind and to try to stay consistent and not grind more off of one spot than the other. It's just like everything else. It takes a little practice. Now, as long as you're setting your jig, you should be in the ballpark. Your edge should be whatever, it's going to be whatever you grind it again. Like I said, even with these jigs, you're the one grinding. So it's just learning how to judge it, feel it, look at the edge. Oh, I took off too much there. Okay, so I got to take a little bit off, or on the other sides of it. It's just actually just learning to do it. Like I said, I don't think having to put all these different grinds on there that you're going to have to worry about staying dead on the angles. As long as you're close, you're going to be fine. There's a question from Steve. Talk about the CBN wheels grits used. I'm going to let Ron answer that because I'm not that familiar with them.
Okay, on the CBN wheels, I have 80 grit as my shaping grit, 180 grip basically for sharpening. I do have a 350 grit, but I can't tell a whole lot of difference after you get off the 180 grit as opposed to the 350 grit. If you're doing wet wood shaping, I would recommend the 80 grit because you aren't looking for the greatest cut. And if you talk to Jimmy Clues, he shapes with a 46 grit and he sharpens with an 80 grit and he turns. So that's a factor. It's a personal thing, whatever grit you want. Some people have 600 grits. I mean, it's just a personal choice. for me, I started out with 80 and 180, and that's personally, it's worked for me. Getting back to the Verigrind jig, I'm sure we've all been to symposiums, woodworking shows, and Doug Thompson is kind of, can everybody see this here? Doug Thompson, I think Jamie mentioned it, has a handout that he gives. You can also go online, print it out, and basically you set your go ahead. But you set your Verigrind jig on top of the picture because it is to full scale, and that will set the arm. Okay, that's Doug Thompson's. And if you count down the slots, the top of the arm is down to the 4th slot. That is Doug Thompson's projection or angle of his arm, which is, I think, in the 40-some degrees. Now, if you're Jimmy Clues, he has the arm projecting down 1 more notch. So all your pro turners have different variances as to their angle on their arm of the tool. And like I mentioned earlier, what does that mean to your turning tool? The farther down that you have this, the more angle your cutting edge is rolled inward. If you look at Graham Priddle's bowl gouge, it is straight. I mean, there's no meat whatsoever on the side of his tool. It is just straight. He can get a super fine cut, but like he said, if you over rotate, it'll be the biggest thrill of your life for a catch. And if you do the Ellsworth grind, which this is, you have a lot of meat on the bottom side of your tool, and it gives you, it's a much more forgiving than having the straight. Now, it was mentioned, as you can see in the black marker, that is protruding out. Your angle is, it's a pretty good angle. If I can get a straight view, there's a lot of meat underneath this tool, and it gives you a big riding bevel to ride on. If you look at the 40-40 grind, this side is straight. It's 40 degrees on all 3 sides. And that Keith has already gone over. Okay, probably 95% of the people have the one-way Verigrind system. And you have a ton of vendors that basically are coming out with different jigs, basically that run off the Verigrind system. Just to show you another one, Liam O'Neill was here. He has a setup, a sheet that tells you which angles to that he does. I mean, getting back, everybody has different protrusions. He does a 1 7/8. He projects his tool 6 7/8 from the front edge of the tool. That gives him roughly a 50-degree angle. So there's many different jigs that you can use to set up on these Verigrinds. I'm going to show you the 40-40 grind, which Keith has pretty much covered. And the plastic jig, where did you set that? Here it is. Keith already covered where any of these systems that you use, These are called Raptor jigs. You have anywhere from 35 to 60 degrees. What these do is give you the projection of your, move that camera so that the arm is, can you see the, yeah, you can see the arm. Okay, so basically this sets the distance from the front of your wheel to the back of your V-arm. This particular one is 40 degrees, and like Keith mentioned, you could put the platform on, measure the 40 degrees using the flat edge here, and it will set you so you can get your top of the bevel angle right, and then this will dictate the 40 degrees on the front angle. That's one way of doing it. Ron Brown came up with a system, and this is basically just a jig that he has cut out to do the 40 degree. You insert this into, you can insert this into the Varigrind jig. I mean, when we were at the Learning Center, I would always bring two tools in, have Dave Kratzer sharpen the 40-40 for me because I just never could get it. So Dave Kratzer would sharpen them and I'd go home and try to duplicate it, and after 2-3 times I'd be way out of whack and bring them back in and have them sharpen them. Well, now there's a jig on the market to do the same thing. And according to Ron Brown, who came up with this 40-40 jig, and he gives you pretty in-depth instructions on how to set this up and how to do this. But you set your arm all the way to the top, and that sets the 40-degree distance from the pocket to the front of your arm. You lock it in. Then you basically take your tool that you're going to grind, insert it into your jig. This is the tool protrusion, which is a little over, I think it's 2 1/4 inches, so it's out there quite long. And basically you turn it on, do the sides first, and that's your 40-40 grind. And if you put a gauge up against it, and like Stuart Batty says, if you're 38, no big deal. If you're 42, no big deal, as long as you're within a couple degrees. And this is basically just a piece of plastic. I think they're like $20 or $25, I'm not sure. He's got a whole set of them that you can buy, but it definitely has, the one tool gives you everything you need to set up for a 40-40 grind if you aren't into the freehand.
Hey Ron, it's Courtney. Just
Yes.
a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Really neat. I hadn't seen that guy before. Do you then manually soften the bottom to kind of transition that edge at the very bottom of the tool?
Yes, I usually do on all my tools. On the top of my grinder, I have a little block. I just set it in there, and of course I don't have the tool in there anymore. And that softens the edge. I mean, you can put a little block of any sort in there, and it'll soften the edge. And it's just a little block. I put a magnet on the back side, so it just keeps there all the time. Now, half the time, I'll just move the arm in a 1/2 inch and grind the backside. Get the right camera in here, and grind the backside off here. And that's a good question. I do that basically on all my tools because I think we've all done it. Finished off the bowl and put the finish on it. And you've got a couple streaks going through that transition point and you think, what the heck has happened there? And you sand and sand and you sand some more and they're still there after the second time you've coated them. Only way I've ever been able to get rid of those streaks is by cutting them out because you've compressed the fibers of the wood and your finish, if you're using an oil, just can't penetrate it because it's compressed fibers. And that's the importance of getting that back edge off of the tool. And any questions? Now that's the 40/40 grind. And I'll just try to show this here. What camera are you on? Overhead? Okay. This is Ron Brown's Best. He sells grinders, jigs, all kinds of stuff. He's on the internet. Just Google Ron Brown's Best. He goes, explains the 2, 3, or 1 3/4 inch tool extension, but there's all different variances of grinds, but this particular one is the 40/40. Okay, then getting back to the one way, I don't know if many of you have seen the one way. It's called the VeriGrind 2. Okay, this is the VeriGrind 2 tool holder. This is the original VeriGrind, both by one way. The difference is where the tool, here it is. It also has a different V-arm system. Again, VeriGrind 2. Get rid of this V-arm out of here. Now, I have used this system here very little until as of late. And when I'm saying system, I'm talking about the VeriGrind tool holder. I never use this basically, but according to the 40/40 grind that Ron Brown uses, if you put this arm all the way up, it's exactly the same cut as using the VeriGrind with the arm up. You can use either or, so I found a new use for this one. So basically, according to, if I do the 40/40 grind, I have it all the way up. And I use the 3-inch tool extension, which is according to his jig here. I don't know, this is not coming out. Okay, now according to one way, if you're doing spindle gouges on the system here, they've got little numbers, kind of as to the original system. They had little numbers on the back that Keith was talking about, as opposed to having the slots on the little cutout slots. This is still numbers. So for spindle gouges, you put it down to number 2. For bowl gouges, they recommend, or number 2. Number 2 is for the spindle gouges. Bowl gouges is number 5 to get your angle so that it will roll in your cutting edge. And this is all reference to long grind bowl gouges. And this one slides into the pocket, and again you lock it down, same setup as Keith was. You set your angle on the front tip by adjusting the arm in and out. Now that is a captured system. I'll show you another captured system. You are on the center of your stone is where you're doing all your sharpening. It's not on the edges of the stone like you would using the original Varigrind. You are sharpening on the center of the stone. My first thought was as well, if you have, and when I first bought this system, I had the regular aluminum oxide wheels, and I was cutting a big groove in the center of my stone because that's where it was locked into. And I thought I'm ruining my wheels, which I don't think I really was, because if you look at the different grinds, for instance, if you do the Chris Ramsey grind, if you saw his stones, they were all cupped in the center, and he used them to round off the back edge to his advantage. So, but this here basically locks you to the center stone. Now, will it ruin, or not ruin, wear out your CBN wheel in the center? I haven't been sharpening with the captured systems like that long enough to really tell, and I doubt it will, because one of the next systems that I'll show you is the wood turning wonder system called the Kodiak system. And in fact, no, we'll do that one last because we'll have to switch grinders. That is a captured system also, which basically you have to use the center of the wheel. You cannot manipulate your tool. All these jigs and things that we use, you still have to control the tool. I mean, they just assist you in setting up certain parameters, but it is still up to you as the sharpener to get the edge that you're looking for. If you grind on the side too long, you're going to get what we call the bird's beak, the hump. I think Keith mentioned that a little earlier. You can overgrind the sides. You still have to control what you're trying to accomplish, I guess is what I'm saying. One of the other tool companies, Hans Michelson, yeah, the Hans Michelson, it's called the Vector system. It is you use it off the one-way system, and he calls it a vector because he has a wide plate. Okay, what does this accomplish, I guess, over the one-way system? It basically rolls in these sides more than by putting the arm all the way down that we were talking about on the Varigrind. It also gives you the shape on the back of your tool that is basically the shape of the back of your finger. It gives you that type of shape on the back, and I think Courtney asked a question. It relieves all the bruising of the wood going through the transition point. It is pretty much like the back of your finger. Now these, I like these systems if you're into the long grind.
We go a couple questions here.
Yep.
One was, when using Raptor jigs, what setting does the arm on the one-way jig need to be set at?
Okay, the question that was asked is what degree on the arm I take. You're saying this here per, okay, again, that is, there's no right or wrong answer. This arm depends on the trajectory of your bevel of your cutting edge, meaning do you want to wrap it inward or do you want the straight side bevel? This arm dictates how much metal is going to be taken off the bottom of your tool to the top.
She wants to know where you set the V-arm when using the Raptor jig.
Well, the Raptor jig, I guess to put it in a short version, I would just put my Varigrind jig on top of the Doug Thompson picture and go with that and see how it feels when you're turning. If I'm doing the 40-40 grind, then I'm going to go by what Ron Brown suggested. And that was to have your tool all the way to the top. So it depends on, this all depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I don't know if that's what her question was.
I think what she's talking about is the Raptor jig, where you set your V-arm. You just adjust the V-arm to get your angle right.
Yeah, the Raptor jig just does the nose angle of your tool.
She was asking about setting the arm with that.
Okay, if you're asking, on this particular one, okay, this is a 40. Like I was saying, they have 35, which I use the 35 for my spindle gouges. The 40 I use for the 40-40 grind. They have a 50 and a 60 that I use for the Ellsworth grind. So it depends on what grind you're trying to accomplish. For instance, and I did not bring it with me, but if I'm going to, I made one, if I'm going to be using the Varigrind jig for my Ellsworth. Okay, that will give you about a 55 degree, this distance will give you about a 55 degree nose angle on the tool. So again, the distance, no matter what jig you're using, if you set it up with, whether it's a Raptor system, you can go online, Kirk DeHeer, which is he's got a video called Sharpening Demystified. And at the Learning Center, we have wood plates that we have made, and these all come from Kirk DeHeer's video, and he's also got an idea. You can use a block of wood as such to get your distance from the V pocket to the front. This particular one is 7 1/8, and that'll give you about a 60 degree front bevel angle. Of course, this is a spindle gouge, so that's 35. But that'll give you a 60 degree front bevel. So you have to play with the distance if you're using these jigs from the front of your tool or your wheel to the back side of your Varigrind. Now, tool projection, and there's all different types of tool holders. I'm going to set this one here. Okay, this particular is the Hans Michelson system that I was starting to there, using the vector. And if I'm not being clear on any of this, feel free to contact me. I can go over with it. The tool system for, let's say, using the Michelson system. As you'll notice, the tool holder here is quite different. This looks like the Ellsworth. This is the old style Ellsworth, which the newer style is rounded. And the reason that it's rounded is because you probably won't see it, but you'll see a few marks on the side there, hit the stone. If you'll look at a lot of the Varigrinds, You'll see a lot of nicks. You'll see a lot of nicks along the front edge of the tool holder also. That's because it's hit the stone when you rolled it over. Okay, this is the Michelson system. And if you look at the tools that if your bevel starts getting here, 2.5 inches, you'll see people grinding a flat spot on the top of the chisel so that it will fit into the holding jig. Well, with this system, it's different. This is the Michelson. He's got a platform that it goes on. And you are referencing this face down, the bevel. This camera is not right here.
It's right here. I'll get you over here.
Okay. So this tool, you'll put it in with the bevel face down on the flat here, so it's registering, and you can use the whole tool. You can grind this thing down to 1 inch, the flute. It's just, or even less, actually. He has like a 2.5 inch tool projection from the tip to the front of your jig here. I think this is pretty much the standard 23 degree or whatever it is. But on this one, you never use the center pocket. And I have a CBN wheel, so I have a stop collar. I've locked it down tight. I don't have to worry about it changing. But on this particular tool, to sharpen it, this is using the Michelson system. You go over a little bit over center and then to the side. Do this side, a little over to the center and back. That'll give you a bevel. Now, Courtney was saying the relief. Okay, the first pocket hole, that gets rid of your bottom here, and then you go into the second pocket hole, and it will give you a grind that rounds it completely off. In fact, I should have put this tool in there, probably, because it would make more sense. But you'll keep, got too much stuff here, I can't do nothing. But this is basically how you get rid of all the back. What you will get is what we were talking about, looking like the back of your finger. And this is all done with the jig, as opposed to just doing it freehand like most of us do. I don't know, is there any questions on that? As far as, that's the Michelson system. Okay, then my favorite grind, basically, for me personally, is going to be the Ellsworth grind, which basically is called the Irish grind, the Ellsworth grind. The only difference between Ellsworth's grind, when he was over with Liam O'Neill, who has done the Irish grind for years, and he went over there and liked the grind, so he brought it over here and did a little adjustment on it. The only difference is basically he has a convex curve on the top, where if you do the Irish grind, this bevel, the top is just flat from top of your tool to the point of your bevel. That's basically the same. And any of these sharpening systems, for instance, the one-way, by the time you get your two bases and stuff, a grinder, you're looking at probably close to 400 plus by the time you get set up. You can get these grinders here, particular grinder. This is a Rikon, which I think was at that time $99 on sale. I think they're $109 right now, and they work just fine. They're slow speed, 1725. And if you want to, if you're just getting started, yes, I would highly probably recommend the Varigrind system. But if you don't have all the money to get started right away, you can do a system as such. Basically, set your grinder on the top of your bench, make an arm with a hole in the center so you can slide it back and forth. And I made this at home, and the only thing, instead of a wood pocket, I just used bolts like this. So for about $5 plus a grinder and a piece of wood, you can start using the Ellsworth grind. Now at the Learning Center we have the one-way system. I like to use the Ellsworth grind. So again, all these plans are online. This is nothing that I came up with. You go down to the hardware store, you buy yourself a piece of tubing to fit inside your one-way system. You put some bolts in. The biggest factor is from the front of your wheel to the back, 7 inches. From the center of your wheel out, down, 4 inches. So you set your bolts up here to be 4 inches from the center of the wheel. Measure 7 inches out. That's your tool projection, so I can use this at the Learning Center. And then as far as your tool holder, the Ellsworth system or the Michelson system, whichever one you have. The one downside with the old system here, this was designed for the 5/8 inch bowl gouge. You can use the 1/2 inch bowl gouge in it also, but you cannot sharpen the 3/8 because it'll go off center. The new one, which is a rounded pocket, it can do the 3/8 all the way up to the 3/4 now. So depending on which system you have. So on the system we're showing now, I just put everything 2-inch tool projection, mark this 7 inches, or do this 7 inches back, which I have a mark on here so I don't have to measure it. But at the Learning Center we have stone wheels, so you have to measure the 7-inch projection, which piece of wood as such. And I can use this at the Learning Center. Anytime you go over to somebody else's shop, if they're set up a little different, it's going to be a different grind on the side and the front, unless you measure it. It's not everybody has their system, exactly set up the same. And if you'll notice down here, you get all your filings from your sharpening. And if anybody does any ebonizing, you just take a magnet and suck up all your filings, and you put that in vinegar, and you can use all your filings instead of putting steel wool and rusty nails or whatever to make your ebonizing solution. It'll cure in just a matter of hours, as opposed to if you use steel wool, it'll take you several days. But I think that's Oh, okay, yeah, the other system, Keith just reminded me, was the Kodiak system. I'm not sure how many of you were at the last symposium, but Ken Rizzo was one of our vendors, and you've probably already have seen this. It's probably not new to you, but this system is called the Kodiak system. It is probably the easiest system that you're going to zoom down on that. It's going to be the easiest system that you're going to learn on. If you know 1, 2, 3 and ABC, you can use this system. If you look on here, and I don't know if you can see it, it's not being seen. Okay, if you can, you got A, B, C, or excuse me, A and B, and 1, 2, 3. For your basic bowl gouge, you just go to A2, and then you've got A3, A1. You can see that on the screen there now. Okay, so this is the tool holder. You push it back. It only moves just a fraction, maybe a quarter inch at the most. This collar comes set up from the factory, so you never touch it. That is set at the factory. And on this system, in fact, I'll do the spindle gouge. I haven't done a spindle gouge. He's got a pocket. It's got right on your tool rest. It's already got your tool extension, which I believe is little over 2 inches. For a fingernail spindle gouge, it says number 1, slot number 1. I don't know if you saw that under here. It's got 1, 2, 3. It's got little grooves on the top. Somebody mentioned, I think, about the grooves. Now this is obviously a captured system. You're going to be grinding on the center of your wheel. Now he does have a retro kit where you can use your standard one-way bases, but I'll warn you, the one-way system, you set it up on the front of the wheel. These are set back, so you have to readjust your one-way bases. So that's why I have a dedicated grinder for this system at all, because it's not 100% compatible. This side of the tool has his own tool rest, which is basically, it looks like a replica of the original one-way that Keith has. It's open on the side. But basically, you just put your arm back to get it to A, as it says on the side. You stick it in the pocket here. And that is, I mean, you can't go left or right. It is captured. And I have not seen yet where it's worn down the center of the wheel. But That's the Ken Rizzo Wood Turning Wonders. I think it's called the Kodiak system. The bowl gouges, basically, for the long Irish grind, you put the arm back. You go to the B setting and then move this out to number 2. There's not an easier system. And I mean, all of these systems, of course, come with a cost. I think if you get the complete setup, he sells a base that you put your grinder in so that the right height and all that. If you get the whole package, again, you're looking at $400 and some with the grinder and all the package. So it just depends on getting started, how much you want to spend. You can start out real cheap with the Ellsworth, but then you still have to have a system to do your bowls or your spindle gouges. So any questions on the? I mean, there's so much different information. Which system works for you? Just get the one screen. Get rid of the. Yeah, you have numerous different types of ways to hold your tools. If you've gone to any of the shows, you're going to see them. You've seen them all, I'm sure. I guess I'm a little partial to the one-way system. I mean, you can do so much. And I think the reason that it's probably the most popular system is because there's so many variables off the one-way sharpening system for all the different jigs and such. Any questions, comments? I mean, this is our first one we've done, so we have a lot to learn, and I mean, I would like to see more of these. If any of you have a certain topic, or if you can do one of these, Keith is invested in a lot of the equipment, and I have also. If you have subjects you would like to see come up, let I would imagine Nancy know. Send her an email. What topics? We'll find somebody that is capable of doing those topics. I mean, I'd like to see a lot of different club members get involved doing these. I have no problems bringing my equipment over. We can set this up at your place, or you can come to my place. It doesn't matter. I'd like to see these continue if you're interested. I mean, I have no idea how many people we had here today, but I mean, if you have a topic you want to be showing, or if you have a topic that you feel comfortable showing, let us know. And let Nancy know, so that we have one person basically that can coordinate all this. Keith, you got any?
All right, so that's pretty much what we've got today. One thing I do want to add is if you're looking to buy a system, you can go to Packard Woodworks online. You can go to Craft Supplies online. They carry one-way. They carry the Ellsworth holder. I'd give you prices, but it depends on who you go to, and then a lot of them have different packages. You can buy a basic system, an intermediate system, and the prices just go up the more you add to it.
Woodcraft and Rockler have them too. We get 10% off there.
You can go to Woodcraft and Rockler. The Kodiak system, as far as I know, you have to go to Wood Turner's Wonders. You go to them, and they've got a ton of different packages as far as all that goes. Like Ron said, if you haven't come up with questions later on, feel free to contact me or him. We'll answer any questions you might have to the best of our ability. We know we might have been a little rough today, but like Ron said, it's the first time we've ever done this, so we're learning some things as we go. We hope you enjoyed it. There is one question that I saw here. Let's see, let me look at them. Mike Kroger said, it seems to me the longer the protrusion length of your gouge is, the shorter your gouge, you will be able. Let me start again. It seems to me that the longer the projection length is, the shorter your gouge will be able to use the Wolverine jig as you sharpen it. And you're correct on that. Hand me one of those. As your tool projects out of this thing, and what he's talking about, I believe, is the flute area here. As you get going, this registers on the flute to hold this flat. As it gets shorter and shorter, you start getting on the rounded edge. Ron kind of talked on that. And so you either have to stop grinding when you get to there, or you have to try to grind a flat on there to hold it in place better.
Another thing, just to show you here, keep that up there. Hold that. Okay, if you see the distance, this is probably over 2 inches. This system is probably 1 inch. Okay, the longer your tool projection is, the more you can roll it over without hitting your wheel. That will roll this top edge of your flute in more. Basically, and that's why, like Michelson, he has.
We can't hear you.
Oh, I've got the mic on.
Okay, and the reason that Michelson has a 2.5-inch tool projection is because he can roll the tool way over on its side. And basically what they're doing is grinding off any edge that protrudes here. With the Michelson grind or the Ramsey grind, whichever you want to call it, and I mean, here's a Ramsey grind. You have to work hard to get a catch with this type of tool. And I mean, you have to work hard to get a catch because there is no wings on there to catch. If you do a hat and you go up into that crown, you can just put this tool basically upside down and just jam it right in there. You do that with any tool, Ellsworth grind or a 40-40 grind or anything else, you're going to get a catch and tear it right off. So, you know, all these different grinds have different places, and that's why all the pros are different. Some have 1 3/4 projection and up to 2.5. They all have their grind, and you know, it's just like cars. Everybody has their personal make.
All right, Monica, you've got a question on here. What is the name of the company that has the adjustable tool rest that can fit the one-way? Can you clarify that a little bit for me?
That has all the holes in the side with there's 2 of them at the,
That's the Robo Rest.
that's it.
Yep. Okay, the Robo Rest, that's a flat tool rest. He unfortunately has gone out of business, so if you can find one, that's great. It is an aluminum platform as opposed, the one-way is a much heavier steel rest. I don't see.
I moved them off to the side.
Oh, okay. The Robo Rest, they go from 15 degrees up to, I can't remember now what it falls down to. The numbers 1 through 9, I think it's 90 degrees. They're not 100% accurate, but again, it's repetition. If you're setting your skew at, or your parting tool at 30 degrees, if you're 32 or 33, so what? And you know, it's not quite as accurate, but the advantage of it is you don't have to sit there with a gauge like we were, you know, to set your platform like say on a one-way system. You just put the pin in through the number, what Monica is talking about. If nobody is, I had one here, but I brought it home. You just put it in 4 for 40, but that's about 42 degrees. So, you know, depending on how accurate you want to be, but he no longer sells them. We do have a couple at the Learning Center. If you've been down there, you've seen them and probably know what she means when she says robo rest. But all of these rests, again, are basically made and come off of the one-way system. I mean, they're all making their accessories off the one-way. And it's like Keith and I were saying earlier, you know, you have all these systems out here because everybody's in business and, you know, want to promote their tools, their systems. So they all work. It just depends on, I like toys, so I try them all that I can.
All right, I'm looking back through the chat because I knew there was one question that we missed. Steve put on here, I read that skews are to be flat ground versus hollow ground. Is it really needed? Well, if you've been grinding like I have on aluminum oxide friable wheels, you're going to put a hollow grind on them. You can't help it. It just, as it wears down, it happens. With the CBN wheels, you can actually get a flat grind on them, and that's what they say. One of the things is nice. You get the wider CBN wheel, and you can grind that. I don't think it really makes a difference to your turning. A lot of people will, if they're grinding, get a hollow grind on theirs. They'll soften that back edge a little bit because it can, if you're using a skew and you see spiraling behind your cut, it's usually the back side of the grind is rubbing on there and creating that. What I've seen people do is actually take a belt sander, turn it upside down in a vise, and sharpen your skews on a fine grit belt sander in the spot between the front roller and the platen of it, where you can push down a little bit, and it actually puts a slightly convex, almost rounded grind to it, and it's tool still usable, and you can get away from that hard edge in the back that way if you want to. I personally, like I said, I've been using friable wheels forever, and you just learn to hold your tool so that you're not dragging that back edge and you don't wind up doing that. Well,
There's all kinds of systems. If you have been down to Rockler, they sell the Sorby system, which is a belt system for sharpening. Works excellent. You have the Tormac system. The biggest thing is if you have a 6-inch grinder, the Balders were 7-inch, and then now most of them are 8-inch, and you go up to 10-inch when you're looking at the Sorby system. They will all put a hollow grind on whatever it is, your bevel, or, you know, you're all going to have that hollow grind on there. Smaller the wheel, the more the hollow grind. We had an incident at the Learning Center. You know, our wheels were starting to wear down. I think they were down to a little under 7 inches. And, well, Alan Lacer and Jimmy Clues, they wouldn't even put their tool on it because they didn't want that hollow ground on the front of their tool. Everybody is different, you know, so they went and looked for a stone that was more of the 8-inch size-wise. For me, I ain't going to notice the difference. Same thing with your skew. If you look, Ali Avacera from Israel, he has a convex skew. He doesn't have a hollow grind on any of his skews. So everybody has a different. Now for references, there's a video out, Sharpening Demystified, that Kirk DeHeer put out years ago. And I think there's an article about it in the American Woodturner winter of 2006, and AAW website has all kinds of information of things that he is, at one time he was kind of the hollowing guru, or the sharpening guru, excuse me. But there's so many options. Ron Brown has a sharpening DVD out, which explains the arm on the Varigrind system. He explains about rolling the cutting edge in or keeping it straight. If you're into the 40/40 grind, if you have the Cindy Drozda DVD or the Ashley Harwood DVD, Stuart Batty will say to look at them because they've done a better job than what he could explaining it. I mean, it's Cindy Drozda has it on YouTube. You just punch her name in, and she's got the 40/40 grind videos, clips on there. Also, if you go to Vimeo, Stuart Batty has all kinds of videos, and they're also on the AAW website, which takes you to Vimeo. I mean, they're excellent, whether it be sharpening, tool control, stance. It's all out there. It's, everybody's got their way of doing it.
All right, well, if anybody has any more questions, if not, I guess we'll wrap this up. We hope it was informative for you. We hope if you're looking to buy a system, maybe this will help you out a little bit. Like I said, Ron said we're new to this. I know there's a couple little things probably could have been a little better, but hopefully everything worked out well. Thank you for logging on and watching this. We appreciate it greatly. And feel free to, if you want to email or call Ron and I, if you've got any comments about what we did, let us know. So thanks very much, people. And hopefully
we'll do this in the future again. Pay a little more attention to your microphone.
Well, the problem is that the setup that we've got right now, you can only use one microphone in this, so we've just got the one lavalier. If for two people like this, instead of having to change it back and forth, it would probably need some type of mic on a stand. So that's something, like I said, we're learning. I set this up for myself, doing it on my own. If we're going to be doing more people, might have to invest in some type of a microphone that can pick up more, because this lavalier has to be right next to you in order for people to hear you. So that's why we've kind of had to change it back and forth. That's just one of the things we learned today. So we learned some things about what we're doing here, and we're hoping you guys learn some things. So again, thank you very much.
Give us your comments, give us your feedback, because we'd like to improve this.
Yeah, we would. So thank you very much. Like I said, don't hesitate to contact us. You can get our phone numbers and our emails off the club site. Let us know what you think, guys. Have a great day.